So there's hot water and some biscuits at the back. You just feel free, even during the practice, if you quietly take something, if you feel you need it very strongly. We'll have a break in about, goodness, we're quite late. We'll have a break at 12:30 or so. Yeah, and we'll go on till a little after 1. Yeah, probably 1:15 or so. Sorry if the late start has ruined some of your schedules. So, certainly very tight schedules on a day like this. And just before I forget, just to let you know that it's a very good day also to attend the National Museum, go to the National Museum to see the authentic Buddha relic that is there apparently in a new space. They have a new location for it. I think you've seen it, Joyaji. It used to be in just one of the galleries, not really very well presented. Now I believe it's in a place where it can receive the space and the appreciation it deserves. So anyway, that's excuse me?
Today it is closed.
It's closed?
Because the holiday.
Is it? That's a pity. There's a program there at 3 p.m., but maybe it's closed before. But if you all turn up at 3 p.m., they won't be able to keep you out. I mean, I'm going there at 3 p.m. There is a program there at the relic. So try. Yeah. Okay. So again, apologies and thanks for your patience. I thought since it's Buddha Purnima and since Tibet House also has a program in the evening with Geshe-la, the Bodhisattva practice this evening, Tushita could do something in the morning. We also have our evening practice for those who wish, but I thought to do it twice would be good. I don't need to say much about what Buddha Purnima is. It's different things to different people. It's not even the Buddha Purnima proper for the Tibetan tradition. They're a month apart very often. But of course, it's practiced, and the Tibetan Buddhist monks in Bodh Gaya will be happily joining their Thai and Burmese and other Sri Lankan Sangha brothers and sisters today under the Bodhi tree, or they will have done so already, probably. Kushinagar, I know, already had their big procession for Buddha Purnima. So anyway, here we are. Urbanites, a little late, but we're beating the noon deadline. So it's still morning. And we can make up for it with some pretty intensive, potentially intensive practice based on the teachings of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, late Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our co-founder who passed away on April the 13th in Nepal, Kathmandu, after a 77-year life, where he devoted most of it to teaching and inspiring people. Several of us here had many occasions to meet Rinpoche, receive teachings, and so forth. And Rinpoche was here also briefly last year and came down to the meditation hall, gave a short impromptu teaching. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with briefly with posture and motivation. And then a short quiet period, just to remind ourselves that we have stopped running around in our cars and so forth, and that we can be slow down and pay attention to our precious bodies and minds. Yeah. And then hopefully that will set the stage for some meditation, reflection on some verses from Shantideva, especially recommended by Lama Zopa Rinpoche to start the day. So we'll do that and we'll see how it goes. And the evening session will be more for sutra recitation and chanting and recitation of some prayers and so forth. Awesome. Can you turn it on slightly?
The White House and United Nations also celebrating
Excuse me?
today. White House and United Nations both celebrating today.
Let's hope it has an effect on their minds. Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, ठीक है ना सबके लिए, nobody is overheating, I hope. Yeah, it would be good if all the leaders could join us on with Purnima, especially for meditation on Bodhicitta. That would be appropriate.
Kamala Harris just started in
If-
White House last 2 years.
ठीक है. If they just go through the ritual of writing, of saying something and lighting candles, then it doesn't mean much. But I guess due to the power of the object and the Buddha image and so forth, it is said that even that has great benefit, at least long term. But short term, it would be good if, yeah, it would be great if all some of the world leaders could get together and meditate on compassion. I don't know if it's ever happened. Maybe some of the youngsters here can organize that. That would be good. Or even some of our leaders, who of course are aware of the tradition. And our Prime Minister has even had Shantideva's book put in his hands by late Suresh Jindalji, a copy that I had given Sureshji with Hindi translation. And the Prime Minister seemed very interested in it and was looking at it periodically during that, whatever session it was, public event. So we Indian people, we have a connection with the Buddha Dharma. And hopefully this is being reignited day by day, year by year, due to the kindness mainly of the Tibetans, great masters like His Holiness and inexhaustible, wonderful teachers like Geshe Dorje Damdullah and others. So yeah, we are fortunate the teachings are still alive, meaning they're alive not just in terms of letters in books, not just print, but there are people who practice and who teach, so we can learn from them, be inspired by them. Okay, so please just be aware that we're sitting here with our so-called body, very complex mechanism, which we call the body, and it's not hovering, it's sitting on a chair or cushion. And there's a contact between our body and the cushion or chair. Just be aware of that. It's a sensation, a bodily sensation. And there's a sense of a body sitting on a cushion or chair, upright if possible, the front of the body open, shoulders naturally set, not rolled back too much and not slouching forwards. There's a sense of openness in the posture, which very much reflects our Mahayana great vehicle attitude, which is supposed to be a sense of openness and generosity, you could say, environmental generosity towards beings, towards the environment, towards our precious world. So we sit upright, relaxed, a sense of a spacious quality, as well as being grounded. A sense of calm, a sense of beginning to become clearer as we slow down, so clarity emerges, some kind of clarity. At least we're aware of the tsunami of thoughts or whatever may be passing through us. We're beginning to be aware. It's reflecting in the mirror of our mind. And there's also a very necessary sense of kindness that emerges when we slow down, because we realize here we are, and here are other people with us in the room and on the Zoom, and all of them, like us, wish to be happy, don't wish for any kind of dissatisfaction or pain. And if the teachings are to be believed, especially the remarkable, one could say, or mind-blowing Mahayana teachings on beginningless mind, then all these beings have been most kind to us in the past, as kind as a good mother. And they are all, so many of us are indirectly or directly connected with helping each other right now, including the farmers who right now are very disturbed by the weather, which has destroyed a lot of the wheat crop. So all these beings, you see, wish to be happy like us, and they're suffering, and they've been kind to us. So there are so many reasons to reach out and at least mentally embrace all these beings, from the people who sit in offices, to those who toil in the fields, to those who sit in shops, who drive buses and other vehicles, and all the other myriad beings, and all the insects and animals and the bees and everything that keeps the ecosystems going, that help us to survive. It's impossible sometimes to go down Delhi streets without feeling tremendous gratitude for the people who planted some of these amazing trees, which give such shelter and look so beautiful, especially after this latest rain. So together with the calm, the clarity, and the kindness, also a sense of sadness, isn't there? Seeing how beings are so unhappy, so confused, without a guide. And something that could be joyful for us, like the sound of the rain, and happiness of a hot cup of tea and a biscuit listening to the rain, it's disastrous for some people. It ruins all the hard work they put in for many weeks, months, and leads not only to that, but to future hardship for many, many people. So there's always something not working well in samsara, and it cannot be fixed as such. Samsara is painful. Meaning, the karmic vision we have right now, based on delusion and karma, this world, this body, this environment, it is not perfect. Anyway, however works for you, generate strong motivation of kindness and compassion towards oneself and the beings who suffer, people you know. Good to remember people you know, to make it also quite personal. And then extend that. Just as people you know are dying or suffering or unhappy or lonely or whatever, so there are millions like that all over the world. And for sure, we wouldn't want to be in South Sudan or anywhere in Sudan right now, or Ukraine. We wouldn't want to be a Russian soldier forced to fight against their wishes. We wouldn't want to be any of these people. We wouldn't want to be a refugee. We wouldn't want to be so many people, but it's happening. I think how wonderful it would be if there could be a way to help people, to help beings, to help the planet restore some sanity, some balance. What could that be? Shantideva is very clear about it at the beginning of chapter 3 of his great work, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. He says, "Gladly do I rejoice in the virtue that relieves the misery of all those in unfortunate states and that gives happiness to those who are suffering." It is positive action, it is virtuous action, it is that kind of action with a virtuous intention that leads to happiness. Nothing else leads to happiness. Happiness is not uncaused. Nothing is uncaused in this universe. Sorrow has its causes, and so does happiness. Although, of course, at a certain level, you could say joy and other factors can come unbidden, but even then, the circumstances have to be created, do they not? For something to flourish, there need to be certain circumstances. So how wonderful it would be if beings could be introduced to this and develop more faith, understanding of how things work, how great compassionate intention which leads to virtuous action of body, speech, and mind can be a great factor, the main factor in alleviating the suffering of the world. Personal suffering, greater suffering. Conferences, arms treaties, truces, they're all, I don't know, I was going to say childish, but people try, but they never work because the mind hasn't been transformed. So let's motivate that we can be part of the cause for goodness in the world. So we spend some time silently on motivation, and or as you wish, you can practice breath awareness, whatever you need to generate some kind of feeling of both sadness, but also the fact that there is a way to help oneself and all living beings. There is a way, however long it may take. And we all have the Buddha nature, you see. We all have intrinsic goodness, not intrinsic badness. So that's a huge factor in our advantage, to our advantage, to use language which can't really convey these things. Let's sit quietly for 5 minutes, reflecting a little, watching the breath, a sense of relaxation, the out-breath, not getting caught up in anxious or negative thinking, seeing it as temporary passing clouds in the vast sky of our minds. Lama Zopa Rinpoche liked to make little drawings, little sketches with pencil or pen. He'd often scribble them on at the bottom of paintings, tankas that he would donate, give to people. He's constantly giving holy objects to people, as well as giving them instructions to make holy objects, from small stupas to 500-foot statues. So there's one that he is used in front of Bodhisattva Attitude pamphlet that came out, and it may also be in the book. It's there in the library. Yes, it's here in the larger version. There are two versions of this book on the Bodhisattva Attitude. So, and the slogan there, or the caption, of course, there's a very, you see, that kind of drawing is what Rinpoche made. It says, what is better than bodhicitta in the life? I'm filled up with bliss. Even the hairs, and the hairs are standing up on end in this little drawing. It's hard, isn't it, sometimes to feel that one could be filled up with bliss, other than if we had created a cause like alcohol or, something else, disco, time with our partners. But to be filled up with bliss by bodhicitta, what is this? What does this mean? How could we be filled up with bliss, with this thing called bodhicitta? Yeah. So the subtitle of this book is How to Dedicate Your Life to Others. So there's a hint there about what brings bliss. And I'm going to read some sections here because that seems the best thing to do at the moment. One could, of course, read Shantideva. That's wonderful. He was also a great bodhisattva. But it's good to read what a contemporary teacher writes, especially if one has the trust that this person actually practiced this. This is not a scholar writing, not some academic just writing about something. This is words from someone who embodied these words, who practiced bodhicitta their whole life. Even, I think, when they were a very young child, they had the wisdom and the compassion, wish to benefit others. And just one little story, some of you have heard, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche apparently very rarely cried. He said one occasion that made him cry was when he was in the Potala palace in Lhasa on a trip to Tibet. He was in the palace, and a monk was showing them around the quarters. Usually, I think they didn't see all those places, but Rinpoche got hold of someone who took him and the small party of students to a part of the Potala where His Holiness had his private quarters, something like that. And the monk recounted something. I don't know whether probably an older monk had told him, because I don't think the monk himself was old enough to have been an attendant of His Holiness at the end of the 30s, which is when His Holiness first went to the Potala, maybe by 1940, when he was already 4 or 5 years old. And he said that when His Holiness came to the Potala at the age of 4 or 5, he said to one of the monks or whoever was there, I'm the one who comes back again and again to benefit the suffering beings. And this was a 4-year-old saying that, 4 or 5-year-old. And hearing that, Rinpoche was so moved that he burst into tears. Yeah. So there's no doubt in my mind, from my experience of Rinpoche, that he himself was a great Bodhisattva, possibly enlightened, one doesn't know, but in any case, one is encouraged to see one's teachers as awakened. And certainly what I saw of Rinpoche was a very awakened kind of life, where he was literally often awake when most people were sleeping. And it was quite well known that he had taken vows not to lie down, an ascetic vow that some people take, not to lie down, and to stay sitting at night. And he would meditate, do his prayers, deep meditation, pujas, feeding the mosquitoes if necessary by rolling up the mosquito net in his shirt. So I feel confident, with what I'm about to read, that this, Lama Zopa Rinpoche practiced what he's talking about, which is quite rare nowadays. Or if I look at myself, one sees one's own hypocrisy, but I don't think there was any hypocrisy in Lama Zopa Rinpoche. What he said, what he said, what he taught, that's what he practiced. And of course, words aren't sufficient to convey, are they? Many things, including what bodhicitta might really be in terms of an aspiration and practice. Anyway, here goes. He says, first of all, the real meaning of our lives, where we may feel there are many meanings, the real meaning of our lives is to bring both temporary and ultimate happiness to all sentient beings. Right? Temporary means food, clothing, whatever they need temporarily, encouragement, advice, advice on insurance policies or which hospital to go to, whatever. But long term, the ultimate aim is to help them get enlightened, ultimate happiness. And to really do that properly, we ourselves need to be awakened, don't we? We ourselves need to be enlightened. How can a person who's a very weak swimmer help a heavy, cumbersome person who is drowning? You'll just drown with that person unless you're a really good, strong swimmer. So in the same way, unless we have totally eradicated all our deluded states of mind, unless we have, developed crystal clear mind, which with great wisdom and unbelievable compassion, how can we help others who are flailing and drowning in the ocean of samsara? How can we help them? We can hope to help. We can help a little bit, but we cannot really help very much at all. We can't stop them from drowning, meaning we cannot stop them dying in an uncontrolled way and again being reborn again and again in samsara. We can't stop that because we ourselves haven't stopped it for ourselves. So only an awakened person can do that. And so that's why we need to create the causes for enlightenment for ourselves. Along the way, of course, we help people. Of course we do. But perfect help, great help, not possible. So enlightenment, what does that depend on? It depends primarily on, of course, wisdom realizing emptiness, but the cause for enlightenment or the enlightenment of Buddhahood, not just nirvana. For nirvana, emptiness is enough, but for enlightenment, we need bodhicitta. We need this all-encompassing mind that embraces all sentient beings. So we need to first generate bodhicitta. And how do we do that? By training in the activities that help us to generate this precious mind. Rinpoche says, if what you want is to liberate sentient beings from the ocean of samsaric suffering and enlighten them, then you need to achieve enlightenment. If you want to achieve enlightenment, then you need to practice bodhicitta. The bodhisattva's attitude is always, day and night, totally dedicate their lives to be used by other sentient beings for their happiness. That's what they're seeking and wishing for all the time. You have to know that. If you feel like that, then there's an opportunity to gradually become closer and closer to bodhicitta and to have the realization, meaning the deep realization in one's bones not just some understanding or very, very brief eureka moment. It has to be something very, very deep. If you're able to change your mind into an attitude wishing to be used printed in, in capitals, if you're able to change your mind into an attitude, excuse me, wishing to be used by others for their happiness, then this is exactly, capitals, what the Bodhisattva's attitude is. And then he said, you know, usually people say, and people would complain to Rinpoche a lot, obviously. Imagine having 150 centers worldwide. You're going to have people complaining to you, you know, if you're the Lama that people go to with their problems. It's going to be complaint after complaint, you know. So I often hear people say, oh, these people are just using me. Even sometimes at meetings in my centers, sorry, he doesn't say my centers, in our centers, I hear this. This is because they aren't practicing bodhicitta. One time I wrote a letter to a center saying, bodhisattvas want to be used by sentient beings. That's what the bodhisattva attitude is. The worldly mind, ordinary mind, thinks that being used by others is bad. It's the worst thing. But bodhisattvas are most happy to accept this. Their happiest practice is to be used by sentient beings. It's what they're always looking for. So, you know, I don't think this is a misprint, and I don't think Rinpoche has been misquoted. And of course, I also don't think he is using this as a kind of kamikaze, suicide-like attitude where you lie down and let people kill you and totally abuse you. That's not what's being said. But the attitude, I think, being spoken of, which I'm sure we all well understand, is that up to now, we have pretty much led life on our terms, wanting other people to fulfill our wishes, to go along with what we want. That makes us happy. And when people don't do it, we become angry or unhappy. So here he's saying, reverse that and try and do what makes other people happy, and which is not harmful for them, obviously, but try and make other people happy. Try to allow people to use you to make them happy without it, you know, totally destroying oneself, or without becoming a bad habit for them, which makes them even more selfish than they already are. Obviously, we have to be skillful. We'll have some practice soon, but this is some background. Then Rinpoche says, the way of practicing bodhicitta is deep happiness. The result of this way of practicing bodhicitta is deep happiness, peace, joy, and satisfaction. How could this be so? Well, all of us seek happiness, yet we mostly fail to grasp the simple fact that happiness comes from cherishing others rather than perpetrating an ignorant and self-centered over-concern with ourselves. Does that ring any bells? He put it very clearly in one of his books, Door to Satisfaction, that the selfish or self-centered mind is so preoccupied with oneself that there's no peace, because we're always thinking about what's wrong, what I want, what I'm not getting, what's happening to me that is wrong, you know, not getting the happiness I want, anxiety. That all comes from just focusing on oneself. Those of us who have had bouts of depression and so forth, okay, one has to be compassionate towards people who are depressed, obviously, including oneself, but it's like there's a churning in the mind of totally self-centered thoughts about how things are wrong for me, how I'm getting a raw deal out of life, whatever, how unhappy I am, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on until one is at the bottom of a very deep pit And then we, of course, then we want people to commiserate and take care of us and help us, and of course, spend large amounts of money on medication. So Rinpoche and the teachings are saying, well, the answer to that is to, wake up a little bit and see that there are also other people on the planet. It's not just oneself. It's not just oneself who's having a hard time. And why is one having a hard time? So Rinpoche, again, a quote from one of his books, or rather from one of his talks. He starts by saying in the West, but of course now it's also in the East. Since we have a lifestyle which is so close to the Western one, many of us, urban dwellers anyway, it applies to us. There are different reasons for rural people to be depressed, like crops being destroyed and farmers not being treated properly, etc., not being taken seriously. Anyway, in the West, millions of people suffer from depression. And of course, that has grown now since COVID and so forth. But if you dedicate your life in the morning, and this means do it properly, and not just remember, but we have to reflect, I guess, meditate. If you dedicate your life in the morning to numberless sentient beings, then there is unbelievable joy and happiness the whole day. Sounds like an exaggeration, doesn't it? Sounds very strange. Who is he talking to? You feel, is he talking to me? This ordinary dude, who's he talking to? Okay, then he continues, cherishing the I, me, opens the door to all suffering, while cherishing others opens the door to all happiness. When you live your life every day for others, the door to depression, relationship problems, all these things, the door to all these things is closed. And instead, there's incredible joy and excitement. And with this kind of attitude, you become wish fulfilling for others. All sentient beings, you see, have been wish fulfilling and kind to you since beginningless time. Of course, we don't see that. We don't understand that right now. And now you can become wish fulfilling for them. From this attitude, all your own wishes for happiness are fulfilled, even your wish to achieve liberation and enlightenment, and to benefit others by causing them happiness in this life, future lives, liberation and enlightenment. So you can become the cause for all of this. And this is the way to overcome all problems. So these were teachings Rinpoche gave in this century, 2009, and in 2010 in United States, Singapore, and Dharamsala. So let's take a look at some verses and reflect on them. Use them as they're supposed to be used for reflection and meditation, and to actually begin to change our minds. So be comfortable. You don't have to sit in a perfect meditation posture for this. You can also be relaxed. It's better to be relaxed. It's not a punishment. So here Shantideva does become useful, say the least. Then we'll have some discussion later. As some of you know, in the first chapter of his text, he speaks about the benefits of the awakening mind. And he says how extraordinary it is. Most people never even dream about such an attitude of giving lasting benefit and bliss to everybody. Who dreams about it even? Who has such an intention? In the second chapter, he is looking at, among other things, he's looking at the fact that we're going to die, and that up to now, we haven't developed this mind of bodhicitta. We have misbehaved in many ways, created suffering for others, Grave wrongs have been done by me, he says, with a mind thoroughly vile and polluted. And he accepts this and says, look, I accept this. I lay it before the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to hide my faults. I was overwhelmed, you see, by the deception of self-grasping ignorance. He says in verse 29 of chapter 2. And he says, I also, because I was so mistaken, so deceived by ignorance, so confused, I even rejoiced in negative things that I did. But now, seeing these as mistakes, from my heart, I confess them to the Buddhas. So, yeah, maybe, today is a good day to confess to the Buddhas, As we remember Lord Buddha, I mean, how did he become a Buddha? It didn't just happen. It wasn't some kind of cosmic error. He created all the causes, lifetime after lifetime, which would have included confessing his mistakes from when he was a very ordinary being like us, meaning without realization of emptiness and great compassion, bodhicitta. He made a lot of mistakes. He would have killed and done all sorts of things. All of the 10 unwholesome actions would have been created by the previous mind stream that later became Shakyamuni Buddha. So we can accept, that we have done many things which are hindering us and which have harmed others. So we can, since it is a Buddha day, we can just recite Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra out loud 3 times, and then just reflect briefly on this verse, and the next verse, which is, whatever harmful acts of body, speech, and mind that I've done in a disturbed mental state towards the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, towards my parents, towards my spiritual masters and others, and all the grave wrongs I've done, thoroughly vile and polluted with an abundance of faults, I openly declare to the guides of the world, to the Buddhas. Let me just openly, mentally declare them, recognizing them. Just as we would rush to a hospital and declare to the doctor that we had mistakenly ingested pesticide or something, that we need a stomach cleanse. So we accept. We don't drown in guilt or self-flagellation, but we accept and we get on with the job of purifying. Taya tawo mune mune maha munaye so taya tawo mune mune maha munaye Taya Tawo Mune Mune Mahamanaya So. Then we realize that, look, we've done all this and we need to purify, but we're going to die and we don't know when. Leaving all, I must depart alone. The untrustworthy Lord of Death doesn't wait for things to be done or undone. Whether I'm sick or healthy, this fleeting lifespan is unstable. It's not only sick or old people who die, right? Anyone can die at any time for a multitude of reasons. And of course, we all do die. My foes will become nothing. My friends will become nothing. I too will become nothing. Likewise, all will become nothing. And just like a dream experience, whatever things I enjoy will become a memory. Whatever has passed will not be seen again. So, if I have to depart this life all alone, Shantideva says, what's the use of right now making friends and enemies? What's the use of it? It's just so stupid, so meaningless. And what I should be doing is considering how can I be surely freed from unwholesomeness, the source of misery. Continuously night and day, he says, I should only be thinking about this. How can I be surely freed from unwholesomeness, the source of misery? And of course, the unstated, what is unstated is perhaps that actually in the end, it's only the Bodhicitta that is a very quick and deep, profound way to get rid of this unwholesomeness and to create causes for great joy and enlightenment. Then we have that verse we mentioned before. At the beginning of chapter 3, there's a complete change of tone from chapter 2, and it starts with rejoicing. And this is so important. We think the Bodhisattva attitude and that kind of life is way beyond us. This is because we're not used to elevating our thoughts and our minds. We keep on getting sunk in a spiral of a certain kind of thinking. Let's put it that way. And that thinking does not include the factor of rejoicing. Rejoicing in our goodness and in other people's goodness. Our thinking very much revolves around, well, anxiety, envy, self-denigration, lack of trust in self and others, hesitation, divided mind, etc., etc. I think people understand what I'm saying from their experience. So here we're being asked to rejoice. Rejoice in the virtue that does end, relieves the misery of all being, the goodness which we all possess. So let's reflect on the goodness you and I have. How do we know we have it? Well, because sometimes we do good things, don't we? We actually don't want to just barge into places and start fighting and killing people. We actually are human beings who like to make friends, or at least we like to be helped and to help others, actually. We feel better when there's a peaceful, loving atmosphere around, and we don't feel so good when it's the opposite. So that's proof that we are basically decent beings who want goodness and happiness, and are therefore obviously attuned to that, attuned to goodness at some level. So anyway, this is all philosophy. Think about actual things you have that we have done, said, taught, which has been somehow beneficial, which is something virtuous, which is connected with one's own and others' genuine benefit. Reflect on that, what you've done today, yesterday, this life. And if you believe in past lives, we've done some very remarkably good things to be born in this way as humans, with enough to eat and drink and the dharma and so forth. So rejoice in that. Think how wonderful it is. You might spread atta around trees in the park to feed ants or sugar. Rejoice in that. It's fantastic. So many beings benefit. They get their daily bread. So small things, big things, rejoice. Think how wonderful it is. Really, we need to uplift ourselves. It's like changing gear. We can't be stuck in some lower gear all the time. Doesn't make, that's not what our car is for. Rejoice. Think how wonderful it is. Feel happy. Then other people have done great things as well, haven't they? And often that makes us feel a little uneasy, a little small, a little envious even. But we don't need to feel that way. We can train the mind to be happy whenever we see something positive being done. It's a question of just training. So think of good things that other people do, really good things, sometimes much more than we do, and rejoice. Just think, wow, that's great. That leads to happiness. That leads to, or some things they do can lead to tremendous happiness and even liberation. You may be envious of, I don't know, some person's ability to help others or to preach or whatever it is. But there's no need to feel that way. By rejoicing sincerely, we feel happy. We create an abundance of positive energy. Plus, it is said, we then create the cause to also be successful, to be able to do what the other person does. Whereas if we're envious, we just block all those routes. We just become miserable. Envy, very useless, dreadful emotion. Really harms us and makes us, it's a poison, like all the delusions are. All of the destructive emotions are like poison. So rejoice. Think how wonderful it is. How wonderful the other person gets up at 4:30 a.m., does their practices, benefits others in various ways during the day on the basis of a strong practice in the morning, whatever. How wonderful it is. Or even kind to people who aren't so kind to them, who look after, I don't know, parents, elderly people, who can be quite cantankerous and grumpy. How wonderful it is. Sorry, I forgot to give people a break, so maybe you need a break to stand up. Sorry, it's supposed to be 12:30, wasn't it? Carried away by, self-centeredness. We're going to go well beyond 1 o'clock, just to let people know. I'm sorry about that. But we might take, that's the text you were taking out. Yeah, let's see how many come back after the break, and then we can do 1 or 2 verses. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, was there any hot water, or there wasn't before? उबला हुआ था, hot, or was it
not hot? मैंने किया,
अच्छा, आपने उबलाया नहीं? अच्छा, अगर हो सके, yeah, thanks. वो गला थोड़ा, Okay, online people, we're just having a 5-6 minute break. Sorry for any inconvenience if we're going over time.
Which one? Oh, that one. Yeah, I have to think of it. Imperfections. It's just bothering me so much. Yeah. Makes a difference, doesn't it? Yeah. Really agitated me. More than it should have.
But it was.
I meant to bring this. I didn't think I was coming. And then you said it. I was working on it, but kind of told me that the last week. I don't get this.
Inactive person. Okay, we'll stop. Really okay.
You went to Sanchi? My aunt went there a few months ago. No, yeah. Yeah, somebody went and said it was amazing. The director of Root Institute went for the first time. And yeah, it's a wonderful place. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, the tea break or whatever break took a bit longer than expected. So we still don't have someone during the day as a...
Do you need a coffee?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So when Rinpoche teaches at the school that we had, when he used to teach at the school we have in Bodh Gaya, we would get really the essence of what needed to be practiced. Although he was teaching children, it was so appropriate, I felt, for oneself and most of the people I knew. So he would emphasize what? He would emphasize kindness, courage, forgiveness, apologizing, rejoicing, all the things that we find difficult, that most people find difficult. And Rinpoche especially emphasized rejoicing sometimes because he knew how envious students, young people, I mean, children become when, you know, someone has a better, I don't know, better mark, better pen, better this, or receives better treatment from a particular teacher. It leads to so much distress among children. Of course, some children are from more impoverished homes in Bodh Gaya, so they feel envious of those who have better shirts and trousers, and sometimes, or better maintained. They all get uniform, but some households are better able to keep them clean than others. Anyway, it's such a painful emotion, and I think Rinpoche was well aware of that. So really emphasized rejoicing in not just goodness, you see, but in other people having more than we have or better than we have. Just generating that more, yeah, it's a happier state of mind. As Shantideva says elsewhere, anger and so forth, what's the anger is built up on a reservoir of disturbed and what should we say, dissatisfied energy. It is, what did he say? I will quote him. He says that he says, having found its fuel of mental unhappiness in the prevention of what I wish for, and in doing what I do not want, hatred increases and then destroys me. Yeah, so it's a very difficult emotion. It's a very difficult emotion. All these things build up, so we need to build up a fund of positive energy. Yeah, and rejoicing is one way to do that, and then it becomes easier to create the causes for bodhicitta. So obviously we need a great fund of positive energy. Yeah, if you could apologize to Maya for the lack of proper catering division efficiency this morning. Yeah, and sorry to you also. Yeah, yeah. Next time, hopefully we'll be better organized. Thank you. So, yeah. Any feedback so far before we go on to some more verses, since we are, well, at least I am still sipping tea and about to bite into a biscuit. Any Any feedback on what Rinpoche, what I quoted from Lama Zopa Rinpoche? People online or 20 people online. And we can unmute you. Yeah. You can unmute yourselves now if you wish. Yes.
Then, as you were sharing with Lama,
Lama Zopa Rinpoche, yes.
I noticed that many a times when that deep compassion is to be invoked, I notice a lot of very deep existential fear.
When you feel compassion.
Yeah, when I think about extending myself.
When you think about, yes.
In that way, like you said, it's running, get up and think about it, how it feels. Things about it, what is very deep existential.
Fear of what? Losing yourself?
Yeah.
That's a very good one. So which self are you afraid of losing?
Worldly.
Worldly.
All this life I've made myself. There's a self-cherishing mind.
Acha, so you see it that way, do you? I didn't want to put those words out, but you see it as a self-cherishing. Yeah, that you're so afraid to go outwards and embrace others and not cherish yourself for a while, that becomes an existential threat.
And of the fact, when you said, something else also, yeah, it just brings up these existential fears that are there. Who am I going to be?
Yes, who will look after me? What will be left of me? Is that it? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think will be left of you? What could you lose? What will you lose?
I will lose myself.
What's yourself?
The idea of myself.
The idea of yourself. Well, the idea of yourself, isn't that an illusion?
It is.
But there's still fear involved. You think, have you been doing this practice for some time? So you just felt the fear today, did you?
No, I have been having dreams about this too. Very existential.
I'm wondering if you need more sense of kindness and appreciation of yourself, because it seems like your sense of self is very, very vulnerable. I mean, only you would know really the answer to that, what the causes could be. But yeah, I mean, what you brought up is so relevant. Deep fear comes up, it is said, for some people when they are reflecting on emptiness, because at a certain point one might feel that, what is left? Where am I? Who am I? If I'm not this or that, then who am I? And then if I expand outwards, what's left of me? Do you find there's any correlate in the body, in the body when you feel that way? The existential fear, you feel a lot of tightness in the body, then maybe some therapists would then say, or just focus on that and allow that to dissolve. Because if one pays attention to it in the right way, calm way, there's no way it can stay the same.
And sometimes it's very, very subconscious. Like I said, I've been having dreams about it.
Have you done a course or something that this is coming up? You've taken these teachings or meditated on it before?
So.
You're a therapist. Now the truth comes out. Become your own therapist. Some would unkindly say that it's the therapists who need the therapy more than anybody. Physician, heal thyself, etc., etc. Very good, very good. Well, good luck. Yeah, you maybe have to undergo therapy yourself. Are you part of that tradition that insists that the person first undergo therapy themselves? But they didn't involve bodhicitta meditation. So it wasn't an existential threat. Well, very good. Now you can pinpoint the enemy according to Buddhism. This is the dread of letting go and letting the world in. And inviting all sentient beings as your guest, as Shantideva says at the end of chapter 3. Is it, I wonder if that would be threatening, feeling that you have to, that you can invite other people in to your life as guests. Is that also a threat? Patience. Spaciousness. Well, very good. Well, focus more on that. Focus on that beautiful verse of Shantideva, which I love to elaborate on, because it's such a beautiful metaphor, of the guest, which is verse 34 of chapter 3, where he says, "Today in the presence of all the protectors, I invite the world to be guests at a festival of temporary and ultimate delight. May gods, demigods, and all be joyful." So, guest, we're well aware of what guest means, especially in traditional cultures, what it means to have a guest, a kind of a sacred bond almost with a guest. You are responsible for your guest as soon as they, knock on your door. And that may be lost now, many, due to the speeding up of our civilization, so-called, and so forth. But guest is still very important. I have friends who traveled overland to India in the early 70s, and they were treated as guests wherever they came. Now they might be kidnapped and have their heads chopped off, but in those days, they were treated very kindly, by most people whose houses, whose doors they knocked on. It's a kind of a sacred duty to take care of someone who is traveling, for example. So for the Bodhisattva, seeing all these beings traveling on the terrible, roads of cyclic existence, they are happy to take in all sentient beings as their guests, to offer them temporary help as well as, ultimate help. So maybe that's something one can reflect on, and that's not so disturbing or threatening as somehow having to give of oneself outwardly all the time. People come to your place as guests and you take care of them. So one practices mentally taking care of people. What would I do if someone were to come to my house? I'd clean up. I'd definitely clean up, and one would bring some nice flowers or fruit or even incense. First checking, of course, if one knows that person, whether they are allergic or not to incense, etc., etc. And then the guest would come, and it would be a bittersweet sort of sadness as well as joy, because the guest is there, but the guest will leave. That's what a guest is, someone who comes and goes. So there's that sadness that the guest will leave, but while they're there, you just take care of them. And that's a joy in doing that, offering them your delicacies, the food. There's people here amongst us now whose houses I've been to, and whatever the situation in the house, one is treated as a guest, and that is something very wonderful, to be cared for. So sentient beings need to be cared for, right? People need to be cared for until they can stand on their own feet. And even when they can kind of stand on their own feet, they still need to be helped deeper and deeper in the more subtle labyrinths of the mind and deviations, distractions that can hinder progress. So that is really something that is worth thinking about. Do I treat others as my guest or not? And there's a wonderful anecdote here from Pawan Gupta, who's worked a lot in the hills, education, rural people. And he tells a story, and it's very much, I think, something, yeah. If he asked people, villagers in the place he was working near Masuri, what would you do if two well-dressed people came to your house in the village? Or, two people who are obviously from outside of the area came to your house. What would you do? He said, and they said, we would invite them in, if they needed help or something or food, we would invite them in and feed them and, take care of them, offer them something at least, to eat or drink. Then Pawanji asked them, okay, what do you think would happen if you went and knocked on a door in New Delhi, needing something, needing help? What would happen? And they weren't so sure about what kind of reception they would get. I think most doors in Delhi, they would be asked, to go away. The door might not even be open to them because one would look through, the spy hole or whatever, or ask them, who are you? What do you want? One would mistrust them. And of course, one can say, well, there's good reason for that. Anyway, the point is, it's not easy to even mentally accept others as guests, let alone physically, But we have to create this attitude mentally because, the Bodhisattva cannot give up on even one person. In the sense, a Bodhisattva, someone on that path, cannot say, I'm going to help everyone, but not Russians, or not Ukrainians, or not Scorpions, or not, I hate spiders or cats. No? I can't bring myself to work for their liberation, their happiness. I hate them, or I'm scared of them. Bodhisattva can't think like that. If they think like that, then of course, then they're not Bodhisattva. So accepting everyone as guests requires training. Let's reflect on a couple of verses from the 8 verses on training the mind. And I'm sorry we're going a bit faster than I thought. That's why one needs meditation retreats. So Geshe-la knows this very well. He has 8-day, 9, 10-day retreats. Then you can get into something, and deeply appreciate it. So maybe we have to do at least a 2-day retreat here at Tushita, one weekend, residential and non-residential. Actually, I'm thinking aloud, but it's necessary. We have done it in the past. 4 or 5 people can be in the dormitory, and we can, some people can pledge to come early. And so then one can have a 2-day retreat on these matters. And then it's more meaningful, and there's a lot more time. Right? So I hope saying this out loud before everyone will create the cause for this to happen at Tushita. We have done this before. Even we had a Hindi course like that, a course in Hindi, in Dharma course in Hindi for local people from Uttar Pradesh.
Residential retreats also.
Hmm?
Yeah, residential retreat.
Residential come semi-residential, or depending how many people are interested. Because we can't host everyone here, unfortunately, physically. Yeah, okay. Now, these 8 verses by this Bodhisattva Geshe-la Tangpa, they are some of the favorite verses of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He learned them, he says, when he was a child, memorized them as a child. And of course, Tibetan monks and nuns memorize hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of pages sometimes. So anyway, he memorized this as a very young child, obviously, in the Potala Palace in Lhasa. And he says he's been reciting it every day ever since. Such an important text, setting a tone for a day of regarding others as guests, most precious guests. So the initial determination is to achieve the highest aim, Buddhahood, for the sake of all sentient beings. That's made clear in the first line. And sentient beings, you see, surpass a wish-fulfilling gem. Wish-fulfilling gem in myth can give you anything physical, can give you whole universes full of gems or whatever. But wish-fulfilling gem cannot bestow liberation, cannot bestow Buddhahood, cannot bestow Bodhicitta. But these things can be bestowed in dependence upon sentient beings. Meaning, if I want to generate patience, I need others. If I want to generate, non-anger, I need other people to practice with. If I need to generate bodhicitta, have to have others as the object. It makes no sense without other beings. So every single being that exists is a cause for oneself to generate bodhicitta and therefore enlightenment. So therefore beings are far more precious than any ordinary wish-fulfilling jewel, which could only give dominion and power and wealth and so forth. It wouldn't give us a happy death necessarily, etc., etc. Okay, so therefore, may I hold them dear at all times. This is such a wonderful thought, and it's just hard, isn't it? In our busy lives, you get out on the, you've had a quick breakfast, and then you get in your car or whatever on the metro, and then there's crowds, or if you're a driver, then there's a traffic jam, or someone pulls in ahead of you or scratches your car. Then where goes this, all sentient beings are dear, may I hold them dear at all times? You just want to swear, you want to wring their neck. If you live in America and you belong to the Rifle Association, you might shoot them dead, This happens, of course. Road rage is happening in India too. In the States, I guess it's more deadly, because so many people have guns, including teenagers. So, just to be able to think and to actually feel that others are dear sentient beings, dear misbehaving, I want to wring your neck, but dear sentient beings, I'm going to hold you dear even though I want to strangle you right now. So meaning, yeah, you behave very badly, you may be an idiot, I've told you before, don't do that, you're still doing it, but you're a sentient being, independence upon you, I will get enlightened and liberated, so therefore you are dear to me. And you want to be happy, just like me, and you don't want to suffer, just like me. So therefore you are dear to me. You are being kind to me, that's a big one. You are kind to me. In fact, the worse you behave, the kinder you are to me. That's my real test. So just the first verse is so amazing. If we can reflect on this and practice it during the day, regarding other people not as nuisances, but as dear ones, even though we may not do anything for them physically or verbally, but we understand how we depend on them. We understand how kind they are, actually. Without their meaning to be kind. They don't need to mean it, but we know how we need them. And they suffer, of course. Many of them will go to bed tonight without enough food in their stomach, these beings. On all the continents, this is happening on all the continents, not just Asia, all the continents. And there's not even mentioning non-humans. And when we are out on the road in our car or however, then we do need to be very aware of verse number 3, which asks us to probe into our mind continuously to check what is there. As soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, as they endanger myself and others, may I strongly confront them and avert them. So that means we feel a tinge of anxiety or a tinge of envy, a tinge of resentment towards somebody, or a memory of some painful interaction, and then developing resentment and anger based on that. We confront that state of mind and we stop it. We just stop it. How? We stop, we come back to our breath, or we pay attention to a physical sensation, or we substitute it with another thought. Or if we are skilled in meditation, then we can really just be aware of the spaciousness of the mind. But we do need to stop that thought, which can only happen if we've recognized it and aren't just on automatic pilot like we are a lot of the time. So, unaware. So that's an important one. And I strongly confront them and avert them. This is the essence of the Dharma in many ways, the practice of the Dharma. Checking our minds. If we know all the sutras off by heart, but we don't know how to watch our minds and our mouth and our thoughts and our physical actions, then we will go astray all the time. Santideva says we are living, we are living within the fangs, how does he put it? Within the fangs of the disturbing emotions. And that to guard our practice, we should very attentively guard our minds. And that the miseries of the deepest hell can be created by the unleashed elephant of the mind. So we have to leash this elephant of the mind. So if we say, oh, I'm a practitioner of Mahayana, I practice love and compassion, and we're not watching our minds, then tricky. We're going to practice lots of prayers and so forth on Buddha Purnima and all, and we feel very proud about that or very good about that, which is good, but then we're not watching our minds, and then all sorts of nonsense arises. Before we know it, we've said something which has hurt somebody's feelings, or we've done something, or thought something negative. The 5th and 6th verses, of course, I'm skipping now because it's 1:30. Time flies. Verse 6, of course, is a great something, to remember again and again, and not to make ourselves unhappy, but to see that, this is the yardstick. This is what one could practice if one put effort, energy, and was skillful about it. When someone whom I've helped, or in whom I have placed great hopes, mistreats me in extremely hurtful ways, may I regard him still as my precious teacher. So that's a hard one. It must be so painful for many people. I'm just thinking also of parents who bring up a child and take care of that child, and then the young adult, maybe 20, 30 years or more, caring for their son or daughter, and then in the end, the son or daughter kind of rejects them or criticizes them, tells them all the things they did wrong, rather than appreciate the fact that the parents did at least tried to benefit that being and took care of them in several ways for many, many years, at a time also when the child was helpless. So at that time, at that point, it's usually very painful for the parents. So if one had really internalized this verse, the 6th verse, one could cope with it better and could even see them as one's teacher, as one's supposed to. I still regard that person as my precious teacher. Teaching us patience and great love, actually, because why do people misbehave like that? Why do people not feel gratitude or whatever? Obviously, because of a disturbed mind, not thinking in a virtuous way, thinking in a way that creates suffering. So, of course, the wise, kind person's response is compassion, not vindictiveness or great unhappiness. And Sujitji has sent something, as he does, wonderful poems and other things. Regarding the guest, the Arabs, of course, Arabs now for many people, Arabs, oh, you know, it's kind of wicked people who sit on a lot of oil or who harbor people like Osama bin Laden, spawn them, you know, we have this weird, we don't understand. But the Arabs used to say, I don't know what they say now, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, or where he's headed. That way he'll have strength enough to answer. Or by then you'll be such good friends, you don't care. This is Naomi Shihab Nai. Then a poem that Sujit ji sent to me yesterday called Compassion. Have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things that no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there, where the spirit meets the bone. Matlab, we don't know what's going on for others. We criticize them on the basis of their external behavior, don't we? We don't know what they're going through. We don't have ears for that or eyes for that at the moment. We don't have clairvoyance. We don't know the deep suffering others are going through, and then we quickly judge them. So compassion means to, you know, go deeper. So yeah, you can use everything, not just texts. Poems, good literature invariably, great literature invariably, I found, evokes some kind of empathy and compassion, because the author almost always has somebody whom we can regard in that way. Because the great literature is speaking about our experience, about life, right? So we can use that. We needn't think, oh, compassion, bodhicitta, something only to be generated when I'm reading Shantideva or my guru's work. That, of course, synthesizes it. It makes it very concise in pill form, but it's there everywhere. And of course, it's out there in the street. You just go out in the street and within a few seconds, we should be seeing something that evokes compassion or care for sentient beings, or concern, let's say, concern. I think, but maybe I'm just biased. Yeah, Sikh Gurdwara do that even now, 3 days as guest, according to Ajirji from Melbourne, where he is the happy guest, I think, of his good daughter, visiting his daughter in Melbourne for more than 3 days, I think. Lucky you. I have a good daughter. Okay, we'll stop now. I also got a message from my aunt saying, what time lunch? I think I told her 1 o'clock, 1:15. Anyway. And then I have to go and collect some photocopies from the market. Anyway, we have an evening session, 6:30, with some prayers, with some recitation from the Sutra of Golden Light. If anyone here doesn't have that text and wants to have it at home and zoom in this evening, we have many texts at the back of the Gompa, of the Sutra of Golden Light. Please take one or even two, if you know someone who might be interested. That text was sponsored by somebody, kindly, many texts. So we'll be reciting that, the Heart Sutra, praises to Shakyamuni Buddha, the King of Prayers, the prayer of Samantabhadra, and the 4th chapter from Sutra of Golden Light. There's also an eclipse, lunar eclipse this evening, so a partial one, I don't think visible from India. So that's always considered a good time also, especially good time to engage in Dharma practice.
What time is it?
The eclipse? I'll check. I think it was 9 p.m. or so. Yeah. Around. Just its time. I mean, India time. That is when the eclipse is happening somewhere in the world. But it's a partial eclipse, not a full one, as far as I know.
Kabir,
Anyway, Jay.
Kabirji, this text, is it possible to make available, or if you list, I could download it and share it with everyone?
Which one?
For the
Sutra of
evening,
Golden
the
Light?
evening. Yes, the evenings for folks who are online to.
Chapter 4. Yeah, I mean, you can. The Sutra of Golden Light is online. If you type in Sutra of Golden Light, you'll get to the website. I think there's a PDF there. Because it's become very popular.
I mean, yes, I mean, we could circulate it online beforehand so that everyone could recite it together. So
yeah, good idea. Yeah, if I can't do it, I'll ask our younger, more trained young people brigade to do that. Yeah, we have a team at Tushita who are good at that. Yeah, and even some people sitting here might. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. All right. So look, let's dedicate for us to be more and more, at least more and more enthused to study and practice, to reflect and become more and more enthusiastic about Bodhicitta, this precious mind which bestows the state of Buddhahood, so that we can be more than just a little helpful for others. And by engaging in this, may we have created some causes, good causes, which help for the swift return of our kind teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who emphasized Bodhicitta so much and who practiced it his whole life. We will recite the long life, the swift return prayer in the evening. And we'll try and we'll make that available online as well. That is available, but we'll send it again. Beautiful prayers written by His Holiness, by Jalto Rinpoche, by Khadrola, several swift return prayers for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Anyway, meanwhile, may we never be separated from authentic teachings and teachers who can inspire us with this mind of Bodhicitta. In that way, we'll be fulfilling the actual wishes of all the Buddhas and all the Gurus. And will be the best way to honor not only our teachers, but also Shakyamuni Buddha. That's what he wished for us. That's why he taught, for us to become enlightened ourselves. Bodhicitta is the supreme method, together with emptiness. Okay, thank you all very, very much. Yeah, good. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Maybe see
Thank
some
you,
of you
Kabir.
this evening.